Hello friends and welcome back to Broken BJJ. My name's Kenny and today I want to talk about something that's come up quite a bit for me recently over the last few months since there have been a number of new white belts coming into the gym since the end of lockdown and since the gym has opened back up. And that's really how to be a good training partner. This is something that is really important both for your teammates and for your own development. And it's something that I was never really taught directly. It's something I had to just pick up on my own. It is something now that my coaches are trying to teach more to the new guys, but it's still something that's quite difficult to pick up, I think. And so I wanted to just give a few pointers on how to practice jiu-jitsu in a way that's going to serve you well and serve your training partners well, and hopefully let you both develop in a better, more effective way. Now, to be very clear, I'm not talking about rolling here. Rolling is different, and we can talk about that probably in another video. But this is about how you learn techniques, how you work with a partner to develop your skills in new techniques. And this is something that you're doing from day one. So it is important that you learn quickly how to learn, because if you don't have those skills and how to learn new skills, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to make any real progress. So the very first thing to do, and you've probably heard this, is learn to relax. Now, for some people, they assume that this means just sort of go limp and let your partner, work with a completely limp body like a piece of wet spaghetti. That's not what it means. You do have to be ready, you do have to be engaged, but you're not fighting. This is not what training is about. Training is not a fight. Training is a cooperative process between you and your partner. So you need to be just maybe chilled out is a better way of phrasing it. You need to be relaxed enough that you're not trying to fight your partner off when he's, learning to pass your guard or learning to take your back or whatever it is. Because if you're fighting that hard, if you're going 100% and trying to make sure that your partner can't apply the technique that you're learning, then he's never really going to be able to apply that technique properly. So you have to just accept that he's going to apply the technique to you and you're going to put up minimal resistance, and then you're going to apply the technique to him with minimal resistance. That's how the process of learning a new technique works. Over time, you will speed up, you will add a bit more resistance. Usually by the end of the class, in my case, we are sparring and we are applying quite a bit more resistance than that. But at the initial stages, especially, like when you've just been shown a new technique, you've just paired up with somebody and you're starting to work through a new technique, please learn to relax. It's not a fight. You're working with a partner, not against. That kind of ties into the second point I want to suggest, which is to focus on the details. There are lots and lots of details to every jiu-jitsu technique. Lots of things that aren't obvious the first time you see them, but as you develop from white belt all the way through to black belt, there are more and more intricate details that you need to learn to make that technique work better. And if you haven't picked up the fundamentals of the technique early on, it's going to be much harder to refine those details later on. Now, you hear about details in technique and it maybe isn't immediately obvious what that means. So when we talk about details, we're talking about, is your hand in the right position? Is your foot in the right position? Are you at an appropriate angle to make the technique work properly? Is your weight in the right place? Are you applying pressure in the right place? Are you moving in the right direction to make the technique work properly? All of these things are quite subtle. They can be hard to see why they matter. especially when you are just starting and you're not in the middle of a really competitive role. But if you miss out on a lot of these details, then when you try to use the technique in a competitive role, you are going to lose. You're not going to be able to apply that technique properly because the details really, really matter. And on top of that, learning the details properly, for me anyway, means going slowly, especially the first few times that you practice the technique. My coach always says, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, that slow equals smooth and smooth equals fast. Because if you can learn the technique slowly and do the technique slowly, where you're just moving through the steps without pausing, but you're just moving through the steps of a technique and getting all those little details right, then you're going to be able to do that technique more smoothly, and that's going to make it possible for you to start speeding up the process. If you try to go too fast at first and you're not thinking about all those little things, it might work against someone else who's got no experience, but very often it won't. It certainly won't when you start trying to use those techniques against more advanced players. You'll find that without using those details, without being conscious of all those little intricacies, there will be holes in your game, holes in your technique that more experienced players can expose and use against you. So take your time, learn the details, don't rush through the techniques. There are no prizes for getting, 100 reps in when those 100 reps aren't any good. It's much more sensible to get 20 reps in where every one of them has you doing the technique perfectly. Now, with both of these points that I've listed already, you will eventually start to increase resistance. As I said, you will start to practice against someone who is trying to stop you more. But even then, in class, you shouldn't really ever be getting to 100% resistance. You shouldn't ever really be fighting to apply techniques. Even when you're drilling techniques, you may want somebody to give you a significant amount of resistance so that you have a real understanding of what an opponent will try to do, how they'll try to stop you. But you shouldn't be going at 100% ever, really, in training. You should be practicing using as little energy as possible to make the technique work. And often you'll see black belts using techniques that you know, and they use them very slowly. They're not necessarily, rushing through techniques. They can move quite slowly, but because their technique is so good, it still works perfectly. So don't always be focused on going fast and going hard. The most important thing is that you do things right, and that's what's going to make your training better. If you're not sure about the level of resistance that you should be using, then communicate with your partner and communicate with your coach. They will be able to advise you, especially if your partner is an advanced belt. They'll be able to tell you if you're going too hard. They'll be able to tell you if you're doing things right. So ask questions and talk about these things. In fact, asking questions is maybe the most important thing that you can do in your class. If you don't know what you're doing, if you're not sure if your hand is in the right place, if you're not sure your weight is in the right place, then ask your partner, does this feel like I'm controlling you? Does it feel like you can escape this? Does this strangle work? Can you feel the strain in your shoulder or your elbow or your whatever when you're applying a submission? Talk to your partner about these things. Again, more advanced belts will be able to give you some probably quite useful advice. And even other white belts will be able to tell you, oh yeah, that definitely hurts. Or, oh, I definitely can't move from here, or yeah, it's very awkward for me to stop you moving into this particular space in a pass, for example. Or, yeah, I'm really off balance when you do this. And if you're doing a sweep. So ask questions, talk to your partners, and again, if you're not sure about something, if your partner doesn't have an answer for you, ask your coach. That's what they're there for. And no coach is going to be mad at you because you say, "Coach, I'm not sure about what I'm doing here. Is this right?" So don't be afraid to ask questions. Nobody is going to mind if you're stuck on something and you just need that little bit of advice. They would much rather that you asked questions and got the technique right than that you said nothing and keep doing the technique wrongly. And finally, I would suggest that one of the most important things you can do is to show gratitude. This is something that I think most people probably do instinctively, but it is well worth remembering that in training, your partners, generally speaking, everyone in the gym wants you to get better. They want to have more good people in the gym to help them train and get better themselves. So whenever you train with somebody, make sure you show them some appreciation. Thank them for helping you. Thank them for any advice they've given you. Thank them for working with you. Thank them even if they're, thank them for testing you, for making you work hard. All of these things will stick in people's memories. If they know that you appreciate them, if they know that you value what they do, they're going to be much more willing to work with you than if you just sort of shrug and walk away at the end of a session with them. So show that gratitude. And somewhat tied into this, I would say, is don't spend all your time apologizing. If you're struggling with a technique, again, nobody minds. People understand that people find new techniques difficult, especially when you are brand new. But it gets really annoying if you keep apologizing for it. Now, obviously, if you accidentally hurt somebody, then by all means say you're sorry and mean it. But if you're just finding it hard to find your positioning or get a technique exactly right, then don't keep saying, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Oh, I'm terrible at jiu-jitsu. Oh, I wish I knew what I was doing. I'm sorry. I know I'm a terrible training partner." That kind of thing becomes really annoying. So don't be that guy. Just say, "Hey, I'm having trouble here. Can you help me out?" That's a much more useful thing than just being all apologetic about it. So those are just 4 really quite basic tips. Number 1, learn to relax. Number 2, focus on the details. Number 3, ask questions. And number 4, be grateful. If you follow those 4 rules, then you will find that your training gets much easier. Your training partners are much more appreciative of you and will be much more willing to help you in future. And you'll find that your jiu-jitsu gets so much better, so much more quickly. Aggression is important in jiu-jitsu. Aggression is going to come in handy when you're competing and even to some extent when you're rolling with your teammates. It's not what's needed in order to learn the techniques. Nobody learns best with just being thrown into the fire and having to fight to survive. That's not how we learn. We learn by taking baby steps and then building up. So take your time, relax, enjoy it. It's not meant to be a war. It's meant to be hard, and jiu-jitsu is hard, but there's no need to make it harder than it has to be. Take it easy, enjoy yourself, follow those tips, and hopefully that will make your jiu-jitsu career start in a much better way and set you on a path that's going to make your whole jiu-jitsu career an awful lot easier, an awful lot more enjoyable, and make you a better jiu-jitsu player in the long run. And that's ultimately what we all want to get out of this. So that is just about all for today. I do want to apologize for the quality of my voice. I've had a bit of a cold this week. It's not that other disease, but it has kind of made my voice a wee bit croaky. So I do apologize if that's been annoying you. As far as these tips go, I'd love to hear down in the comments what you think of them. Are these useful to you? If you're just starting out in jiu-jitsu, is this something that you have been taught about in your gym? And if not, let me know if these kind of tips are useful to you. If you're somebody who's got other tips, if you've got other ideas of what people need to do to be a good training partner, again, put them down in the comments and hopefully we can get a bit of a discussion going about that. Please also like the video if this has been useful to you at all, and subscribe if you think you'd like to hear more from me about how to make a go of your jiu-jitsu. But for now, that is all I've got for you. So thank you very much for watching. Enjoy training, and I'll see you next time.